Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, the show that is part of the Simply Luxurious Life online destination, cultivating true contentment, the art of living a life of quality over quantity. Visit the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, at our simplified URL, tsll.co or thesimplyluxuriouslife.com to find the show notes for each podcast episode, as well as much more weekly content to elevate your everyday and deepen your contentment. From a Monday motivational post, recipes, videos of the cooking show series, style and decor inspiration, French and British inspired content, and readers' favorite regular weekly post, This and That, which is posted each Friday morning. Now to today's episode. Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. And whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 378 of the Simple Sophisticate podcast. And today we're going to take a metaphor from the garden and look at it through the lens of how we can apply it to our entire lives. We're going to talk about composting. Yes, composting. If you're a gardener, you know what we're doing. We are turning unwanted matter into the matter that brings what we want to life, to fruition, because it really is possible, not just in the garden, but also in our lives. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk about how the arrival of the spring season is a metaphor for life, but really only if we choose to do so. Before I get into the topic of today's episode, I want to give a little hint as to what this week's petit plaisir will be. It is a Francophile find, and it is a book, and it is a book that, if you are enjoying a particular series on television right now, you will probably want to explore this book, having just finished it and absolutely enjoying it. I'm going to talk you through why I loved it, why I think you might as well, and what it contains, because it doesn't contain a story of just one individual. All right, but that's too many hints. I think you probably guessed what it is. If not, stay tuned. Even if you have guessed what it is, please do stay tuned until the end of the episode, and we'll chat a little bit more about it. All right. So in today's episode, we're going to choose to compost our past. And this is how the arrival of the spring season can be, I should say, instead of is, can be a metaphor for life. So it's a choice. We can just unconsciously go from season to season and not see the opportunity. Or if we are living consciously, we can see the opportunity that winter gives us and then spring provides. So that's what we're going to chat about today. So I want to begin with a simple quote. And when I heard it, I chuckled and I smiled and nodded my head and was like, oh man, yeah. Here it is. Composting what was into what will be. Mother Nature and the cycle of seasons provides endless life lessons and nourishing guidance if we are wise enough to heed her teachings. More specifically, spring's arrival, the season, as we all know, that introduces itself after winter, the latter season of which for many of us can be frigid, keeping us more homebound and bundled up far more than we might prefer, as well as causing us to take stock of our home environment more directly and intimately because we are in our homes more often. It was upon hearing this statement, this phrase, this quote in a recent yoga class that I immediately smiled as I shared. And it was because there is so much truth in this literal description of how compost is created for gardeners in our gardens. And as to why it applies to our lives, it can be absolutely figuratively true as well. However, and I just want to keep repeating this because I think it's just so important, that we can't just blindly live life and hope things wonderful happen. We have to consciously engage. We have to choose and thus remember to compost in the first place. In other words, as a gardener, if I don't take all of my cuttings after pruning and the leaves after raking and all that becomes debris and that is no longer needed, and I don't place it somewhere to begin the composting process into what will become the nourishing organic matter to later place back in the garden after a duration of time to then condition the soil, then I have wasted an amazing opportunity to care for myself well. Because what our past provides is a unique lesson guide or curriculum, however you want to look at it, that is solely made for us. And the same with our compost. When we know what in our garden we can compost, we are creating the soil, organic matter, that will then nourish to life or bring back to life or create better soil for the plants we plant. But we have to choose to do it. So now let's look at it through the figurative example of composting our past. Even if we wisely do take the unwanted events in our lives that have already happened and choose to see them as valuable life lessons or signposts advising us how to make better decisions moving forward, we still have to do something else. We must also remember to be patient. Because just as the debris we place on the compost pile takes time to break down and become what will eventually be placed back into the garden as an asset, we too must be patient as we give our life decisions time to bear the fruit we have invested in by applying the new knowledge we have gained. Spring gifts us with an abundance of wonderments and opportunities to apply what we have been investing in and working on during the winter, or if we've been healing or resting during the winter, to then provide an opportunity to feel rejuvenated and feel re-energized as we step into this new season. So not only do we need to remember to view winter as an opportunity to tend to what needs our attention, we must also then be courageous enough with spring's arrival to step forward into what that rest has given us the ability to do. Simply because we plant, water, and fertilize a new plant in spring or pot up a dahlia tuber in spring doesn't mean the beauty we hope to come will arrive in spring. Most likely, we're going to have to wait until another season, summer, maybe even fall. Maybe even for some vegetables such as broccoli, we actually plant it in the spring and we don't harvest it until mid to late winter. But we still have to plant it at some point if we ever want to harvest it. So let's talk about the dahlias for a second. The dahlia takes about 100 days to share their first flower. So once we pull the tubers out of storage, we pot them up in plants, often not outside. We keep them in a greenhouse or inside for a couple months until the first frost or the last frost is passed. We have to wait 100 days for that dahlia to share its first flower. But once they begin flowering, so long as they have been planted in their right conditions and the gardener keeps deadheading the blooms, those blooms keep on coming until the first frost in early fall. This is a beautiful reminder to be patient with ourselves and the changes we have begun to put into place, or the steps we have begun to take that will eventually, but not immediately, lead us to where we want to arrive. Spring is the beginning of the new journey, the beginning of the change that will eventually become what we hope it will be. But we may not arrive where we wish to go until summer, as I mentioned, or early fall, or even early next year. So, for example, if you're planting new heliobores this spring, which is when you often purchase them and plant them, they're not going to bear their first flower until next late winter or early spring, so almost a year later. But, oh my gosh, is it worth the wait? As they will keep returning every single early spring, late winter with more and more flowers, because as they become more comfortable in their soil, really cultivate their roots, they become more content and thus more giving of their beauty. However, none of this will happen if we never choose to compost in the first place. Okay. So we're going to take a look at 8 examples, 8 specific things that we can remember to compost, figuratively speaking, in our life to turn into something of beauty and wonderment and something we want to happen. So here is the first one: rejection of any kind. Sometimes what we want but don't acquire is eliminating future headaches and pain we could not have seen or predicted. For this reason alone, rejection should be a relief, even though in the moment we may think that's not possible. However, this is an opportunity for us to practice gratitude. We often don't realize what we have avoided until years have passed. I mean, in my own life, it took me, although I didn't regret the decision of this one particular relationship ending, it took me 15, 20 years to realize, oh my gosh, I avoided one of the biggest headaches of my life. And it would have been a huge headache, only because it was partly because I trusted who I thought I truly was, even though I hadn't truly come into being who I am now. But I had an intuition. And by trusting that intuition, I gave myself the best gift by not having a certain thing happen. And this is where rejection can be an amazing thing to compost because it gives you something rather than denies you something. However, there may be instances where there is rejection and you genuinely want this to happen. You know it in your gut and in your intuition. This is what you want. And this is what's going to sharpen your clarity. So you're being given clarity, and that clarity becomes you have chosen to compost the opportunity in the initial rejection. So then you continue to persevere and improve areas that need your attention, and you might change what you're exactly aiming for. But again, you have clarity and you know for certain what you are seeking now because that rejection has honed that vision or that focus of what you're going after. Either way, whether the rejection reveals we need to let go of something and head in a different direction or work a bit harder and refuse to give up, there is value in the rejection if we choose to see it that way. So that's number one. One of the things in our life that we can compost that was unwanted in the past and is something fabulously awesome in the future. Okay, second one, unwanted feedback or criticism. Okay, let's dive into this one. When we receive unwanted information, or opinions, or yes, judgment about any aspect of our lives, personal or professional. And it will sting often even more depending upon who delivers the message and also how vulnerable you made yourself that provoked whatever that criticism was, how invested you were in it, how much of a piece of part of you it was. So for instance, if the constructive criticism is provided from someone we respect, while it may sting a little, we can be grateful that this individual cares enough to provide the feedback because it's constructive. It's been given in a loving way, but it's also trying to be helpful, not make us feel good. That really won't help us in the long run. So we can be grateful that this individual cares enough to provide the feedback so that we can improve. Initially, that sting may arrive in the form of embarrassment, but had we not received it, we wouldn't know where we needed to direct our attention to improve. Now, on the flip side, when that critique or that feedback or that judgment comes in the form of being bullied or teased, either online or by people we don't personally know, but they choose to pass judgment for any number of reasons, it can sting deeply, interestingly enough. Partly because we have chosen to be so vulnerable, and this attacker, and I put that in quotes, but you get the idea, they're attacking us, they're trying to hurt us, took advantage of that vulnerability, and they're trying to cause pain. They're trying to either stop us from doing what we're doing, trying to deter us. And so this sting feels different than someone who cares about us. However, if we reframe what we receive in those instances, it becomes easy to ignore. And I talked about this in detail in Monday's motivational post, where we talked about the importance of getting to know yourself. And I linked that post in today's show notes if you want to check that out and dive more deeply into why that sting doesn't hurt so much. But I want to talk about just briefly here. This is actually an opportunity, something that we don't want from someone who doesn't care about us or is trying to intentionally hurt us. We can actually be gaining something in this instance that they did not intend to give us as a benefit or a gift. So they actually provide the voice of the devil's advocate. If we are working on how to predict what naysayers might say, so if we're working on a project or we're attempting to put something new out into the world or present ourselves in a way that we've never done before, be more of our true selves, what are we going to be? What is it that we should be expecting so we can be prepared? They provide one of the strongest devil's advocates' opinions. And as we know, not everyone ever is going to agree or like what we do. There's always going to be people that don't like what we do or have a negative opinion about it. That's just the way it's going to be. But knowing our audience in life, and specifically if we're presenting a business idea or whatever, is very helpful. This is part of the critical thinking concept we've talked about often here on the blog, and a concept that I'm going to dive deeply into in the Contentment Masterclass that's going to be released in June. I will teach you the skills of critical thinking after having taught it for 11 years in my 20-year tenure of teaching. But knowing your audience is a crucial component to being a critical thinker. So this is not, whatever it is that you receive from them is not going to change who you are presenting yourself as, because you are going to stay true to yourself. Absolutely. But this is information so that you can better communicate and connect and demonstrate that you do see and understand what people might be doubtful about when it comes to who you are or what you're trying to do. In other words, if you hear or read words or comments that are painful to hear, first keep in mind it is a reflection of the speaker and their insecurity, pain, and a myriad of other feelings about them that communicate who they are and their life experience, and you have done something that triggered them. Do not take what they say personally, okay? But then start mining it and move on. Don't linger, but maybe there's a gem in there somewhere. If not, just simply move on. But sometimes there is. If it really, really hurt you, then maybe there's something in there. Even if it's, I don't want to make anyone else feel the way they have made me feel. What can I do differently in my life? Or what can I continue or make sure I continue to do in my life to never let anyone feel the way they have made me feel? That is a powerful gift they're giving you. Just knowing how that feels personally and ensuring that you never make someone else feel that way. So you compost that. You mine that momentarily. As I said, do not dwell here. And see if there are any unintentional insights into how to better understand others so that you can practice the compassion that was not given to you. All right. So that's number 2, how to compost unwanted feedback or criticism. Number 3, moments in which you engage in a manner you have regretted. We all have moments where we engage, speak, or act in a way that either immediately after doing so or in hindsight, we realize we wish we had not. First, the fact that you have regret shows awareness, and that is a powerful step in the right direction to growth and change. Compost what prompted you to say or do what you did and learn from it. Maybe it had nothing to do with the person directly, but rather your state of exhaustion or was due to events that had occurred earlier in the day. Take all of this valuable knowledge and either seek out experts or books to learn the skills you discover you are lacking, or become more aware about your own energy levels, taking care to take care of yourself well as a preventative measure. So this is all valuable information about you, how you're journeying through your life. Is it working? Is it not working? What triggered you? Why did I do that? You can't change other people's actions. You cannot tend to their tasks. That's their responsibility. But what can you tend to? Okay, that's number 3. Number 4, something else we can compost: the end of a relationship, job, or life chapter, whether we've chosen it or not. So relationships of all types end for all sorts of different reasons. From the end of a friendship to the death of a loved one, endings will happen throughout our lives. When we remind ourselves to engage lovingly and in integrity or with integrity to honor our true selves, it is much easier to avoid feeling regret with regards to how we engage in the relationship, no matter how long it lasted. However, it often takes time to learn how to engage lovingly and with integrity, and those lessons of learning will more often than not take place in the many different relationships we engage in over our life journey. So upon reflection, rather than blame or cling when those relationships end, look for the treasures that are being offered to you so that you can move forward with a more loving heart as well as being grounded in who you are, or inspired to become more knowledgeable of who you are. So those are the first 4 examples of unwanted life moments that we can compost into what we do want in our lives to happen in the future. Now, I have 4 more to share with you, and I will do so after I introduce you to this episode's sponsor. If you're tired of cycling through ineffective skincare trends and overcomplicated routines, then I want to introduce you to our sponsor, OneSkin. Their products make it easy to keep your skin healthy while looking and feeling your best. No complicated routine, no multi step protocols, just simple, scientifically validated solutions. The secret is OneSkin's proprietary OS01 peptide. It's the first ingredient proven to switch off the aging cells that cause lines, wrinkles, and thinning skin. And they've got several studies to back it up. So I've been using their products for a while now, specifically on my hands, just to see what that improvement would be. And I have noticed an improved elasticity, a halting of the dryness that was happening on my hands because I'm often outside in the sun in this dry air here in Bend, and it has shown to be effective. OneSkin has over 4,000 five-star reviews and has been recognized by Fast Company as one of the most innovative brands in 2024. So often, when we use other skincare products, we are treating the symptoms rather than the root causes of aging. Most skincare available on the market is designed to provide a temporary reduction in visible signs of aging, addressing just the surface symptoms of an underlying decline in skin health. So, what OneSkin has done is that they have combined tissue engineering, data analysis, and cutting edge longevity science to create the world's most effective product to target skin aging. OneSkin believes the purpose of skincare is not just to improve how we look, but to optimize our skin biology so that it is more resilient to the aging process. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. As a Simple Sophisticate listener, get started today with 15% off your order with promo code SIMPLE at oneskin.co. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with promo SIMPLE. ONESKIN.co. And after your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please do support the Simple Sophisticate podcast and let them know we sent you. Welcome back. Let's dive right back into the unwanted life moments in our past that we can compost into something wonderful. Number 5, anytime there has been a feeling of a lack of fulfillment or connection, maybe when you're at work or in your life, you just don't feel fully nourished based on what your temperament most craves or most does feel nourished by. That's valuable information. So let's dive into this. By feeling lack, we are actually being given valuable information. It may be prompting us to stop looking outside of ourselves or down the road into the future and instead to start noticing and witnessing all that is going so very well in your life right now and to improve your practice of gratitude. So right there, that's one of the most simple things you can do. And often at least in my own experience, I've found that I wasn't practicing regular gratitude enough. When I started to practice regular gratitude, just noticing all the little awesome things, and whether it's just a thought in my head, just acknowledging something or saying it out loud or writing a thank you note or whatever, the days become instantly brighter. And that positive energy, that's genuine positive energy. So you're being, it's not fluff, it's not just surface, it's not just to gloss things over and make things better. It's genuine. It provides an energy to the entire environment, whether you're by yourself or not. Or these instances of lack or feeling of non-nourishment or connection may be trying to prod you to start making changes so that you can realize that either, yeah, you are correct, this is not the place where you're going to be nourished, whether work or relationships or your life choice, where you are in your life, and you do need to do something new and different. Or it might be, yeah, you're going to be prodded to do something different so that you realize how awesome your life was, so that you appreciate it more. But I can't tell you what that is. I can't tell you which way it will be for you. You have to do this. You have to be courageous enough to go, okay, I don't want to keep feeling this way. I need to do something different. But it is turning that unwanted feeling of lack of fulfillment or lack of connection into something that prods you forward to explore and deepen your practice of appreciation or gratitude. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, so it happens to all of us, those everyday oopses or embarrassing moments. Let's explore this. So Maybe you've spilt the coffee on your new outfit at the beginning of the workday. Or you forgot, halfway through your speech, what were supposed to say. And there's all sorts of embarrassment, arises within you. Or you've forgotten an appointment or anything else. Seemingly small moments of hiccups that can affect the harmony of our day if we let them. So someone who chooses to compost will learn how to either learn from that instance, whatever it is that happened, or laugh it off, whichever is the best response based on context. And then just go about their day without a hitch. They won't let it bring down their day. They just move through it. They accept it and move forward. They don't deny it. They do learn from it so it doesn't happen again if they've contributed to it. But they also acknowledge what they have control over and what they don't. Sometimes these things just happen. So when such oopses occur and they have the effect to derail us from a good day, then we need to do some self-reflecting. So if that one little hiccup derailed the entire rest of your day, likely it was just the straw that broke the camel's back and something else had been building up that you hadn't addressed. So examine that. But in all sincerity, be honest with yourself as well about that speech. Were you prepared enough as you should have been? Or did you just think you could wing it? And now you realize that that wasn't the best idea. Especially if it bothers you so much that you did mess up, then clearly you care about it. So why not invest in it beforehand? If to the forgetting the appointment, if we forgot an appointment, when we reflect, what caused that to happen? Were we too busy, overwhelmed, and didn't take enough preventative self-care? Or did something occur beyond our control that was more important? And we need to remember that these things happen, and we then just have to pay the consequences. So often when you miss an appointment, you have to pay a late fee or a cancellation fee. And in this instance, something else was clearly more important, but you still have to pay the consequences. Take responsibility for your non-action, in this case, not showing up, and move forward. But if you didn't show up because you were so overwhelmed with your life, it was so overbooked, then maybe some adjusting is required. So again, this all these instances give you an opportunity to grow, to learn, to polish. And even if it's something you don't need to improve from, give you an opportunity to, with ease, move through these unwanted moments. Not making fun of yourself while you're doing it, but also not dwelling on it and letting it drag down your day. Just, it happens. As an HSP individual, I know that in the past, certain instances that were really embarrassing would really just, I'd hang on to them. I'd feel like everybody saw that. Oh, how embarrassing. And now part of it comes from having taught for 20 years, and you just get used to laughing at yourself because you make so many little oopses or trips or whatever. And, it actually just shows people that you're human, and the kids often like it much more. But I also don't degrade myself, because that also is something that you still need to value yourself, but you also don't have to take yourself so seriously. All right. So again, all opportunities to grow and learn and lighten up and enjoy the day. Don't let that little hiccup ruin that gorgeous day that's waiting to be savored. All right. Number 7. This kind of goes along with number 2, but I really think it's important to grasp this because we do not have control over anybody else but ourselves. So any behavior of others, whether it's a word or words, their actions that are directed at us or others we care about that are unwelcomed. So when this happens, as we know, we cannot control others, and if we attempt to, it is a waste of our finite energy. And also, by attempting to control someone else is a form of manipulation, and it doesn't reflect well on us, as it reveals more about us and our insecurities than it does about the person who we are trying to control. With that said, because we cannot control others, they will sometimes say or do things that are hurtful. There are all sorts of responses we can have depending upon the situation. So it's really based on context. However, your goal, if you're living in a place of contentment and peace and sense of a secure self, you know yourself, you ultimately need to immediately remind yourself, don't react, give yourself time to respond, and also decide if responding is even called for. So sometimes not engaging at all and moving on and away is the wisest idea. But sometimes we do have to respond as a way to stand up for ourselves or others or a cause, etc. With all that said, when we immediately know that our response needs to be a response, not a reaction, we are learning to compost that unwanted situation, and make the most constructive choice for our life journey and for those we love. So it kind of ties back to the second point in the sense of what their actions are toward us reveals so much more about them than it will ever reveal about us. But we do live in a world where we engage with other people. And so we need to know how to most constructively and lovingly, but with integrity, engage if it's called for. Then we can start to make decisions as well. So, can we change our life routine, our choices of who we engage with? Can we start making different and better decisions for that so that we aren't if we're consistently being bombarded by this behavior and these actions and they make us feel this horrible way? Can we change our life so we're not confronted by this so often? Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not, but it also reveals to us so much about what we can have agency over. Okay, so that's number 7. Last but not least, derailment of goals once set to accomplish. I wanted to end with this one because often when we look in our past, shouldn't say often, sometimes when we look in our past, if we are continuing to dwell on something in the past and haven't let it go, it's because we hoped for a better outcome or a different outcome and it hasn't happened. But we're getting in our own way by doing this. So let's talk about goals that we've set in the past, maybe recent or a long time ago past, that didn't come to fruition. So when you look back on your life and you see one or more goals that you have attempted to accomplish that just didn't work out, and up until now, maybe you have told yourself that you failed. However, I want to reassure you, I wholeheartedly doubt that is the case. There are treasures to be found in those unfulfilled goals. You can discover areas of improvement that you can make, knowledge sectors you can learn more about, or maybe that you just need to be more patient and handle temporary setbacks better. I think about that last one from time to time when I set a goal, and even if it's one that I hope to get done in 3 months or 6 months, and I have one day where I don't adhere to what I told myself I was going to do. When we beat ourselves up about that, when we shame ourselves for that, we actually are taking away energy to be able to continue forward. So this is partly about learning about how we handle setbacks. Do we compost them or do we use them against ourselves? In the case of shaming ourselves, we're using those setbacks against ourselves, and that's not composting. That's throwing away the goodness and not taking advantage of the opportunity given. We're all going to have setbacks. We cannot control the world. We cannot control, exhaustion to some degree with regards to temporary demands on our life. It's how we navigate and manage those and nurture our way forward. There's a lovely analogy that I recently read in a book that was actually about entrepreneurs and how to navigate running your own business. And one of the things he said, he's like, once you set goals, it's kind of like kayaking. You can set your sight on where you want to be, but if you're on a river or in the ocean or anywhere where there's Mother Nature that's involved, sometimes to go straight at that goal is actually going to take more energy and more time and actually might make you unable to reach it because you're fighting the current. Often you have to go what may look counterintuitive in the direction to your goal, but you're using the current to your advantage and you're saving your energy. In other words, it may look on paper that you're slightly off track, but in fact, to go directly at your target without any hiccups, which will never happen, might actually never enable you to reach it at all. So if we look at it from that lens, knowing that there will be hiccups that will arise, knowing that things are going to come up that will cause a slight delay, those things don't mean we're not going to make it to where we want to be. It's part of acceptance, dancing with life, but having a very clear vision of where you want to go. All right. So derailment of goals once set to accomplish. Those can be things that you compost, learn from, and apply forward to actually being or reaching the success that you desire. All right, so those are 8 ways that we can compost the unwanted moments in our life, whether recent past or long ago, that maybe we've been hanging on to, and it would be best, well, it always is best to let go, but you can always turn it into gold. You can always turn it into gold. The examples that we just talked about are general examples for sure of unwanted life moments, but they can all, absolutely. And more specifically, whatever your life circumstances can be composted into what will be something you wish to be in your life in the coming months and or years. But it all begins with shifting your frame of mind. Each one of us has oodles of debris in our past to compost. Instead of tossing it aside, why not turn it into something that contributes well and into what you want to be part of your life? It is possible. And it begins with you both seeing the opportunity to do so and in being patient enough to let the process of evolution or composting bring to pass what you have invested in. All right. You can take a look at that list in the show notes. And I've also included some previous posts and episodes to really explore this idea of handling unwanted change, as well as 11 life enriching decisions that take time to bear fruit but are worth making. And also a post about the 7 best long term investments in life that require investing without promise of a return. You can find all of those on the show notes on the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 378. And I'll be back with this week's Petit Plaisir. All right, so this week's Petit Plaisir is a book. It's a biography, actually, and it came out in 2021. But I was inspired to read it after watching the new look on Apple. And a reader, a longtime reader of the blog, recommended Justine Picardi's biography, Miss Dior, A Story of Courage and Couture. And as you know, the series covers the life of both Christian Dior and Coco Chanel. And Justine Picardi actually wrote both biographies that are largely drawn from for the series. She wrote one and updated it on Coco Chanel. And she wrote this one that is largely focused on Christian Dior's sister, Catherine Dior, who, if you're following the series, you know that that Catherine plays a prominent role or is a prominent character in the storyline of Christian Dior. So this biography is a very pleasant read. It does start with her childhood and Christian's childhood, and she incorporates a lot of passages from Christian Dior's autobiography. So Christian Dior wrote and published an autobiography a year before his death, so in 1956. And so she pulls a lot of passages from there, especially about during that time when he was searching for his sister while she was at Ravensbrück during World War II. And there is a slight differentiation as to how she eventually returned to Paris. Not a big one, but as in the series, she's found her way to his apartment in Paris. And in fact, he actually did pick her up at the train station. But it was after a much long delay of searching for her and hoping she would come home, as the series accurately depicts. So much of the television series, I know some critics haven't liked it, but I have really enjoyed both storylines. And it's inspired me to learn more about the full true stories and what is different, what has been commingled, and what has been left out. And I think that's always worth doing. So if you do like the storylines, if it's piquing something in you, I encourage you to read biographies, historical documents that demonstrate what we do know about these characters. But I certainly didn't know that much about Christian Dior before this series, and so now I'm wanting to read his autobiography. But that's what I wanted to share with you about this autobiography. So yes, it's largely about Catherine Dior, and it tells her entire life story until her death after living a long life. She died in 2017, and she carried and took care of the brand throughout her life. That was one of the things that was part of her inheritance from him when Christian died, and she proudly and gladly did that. But this is also the story of Christian Dior and the Dior brand, and how, yes, the perfume Miss Dior came to be, and how it largely is inspired from Christian's sister, Catherine, although it's never directly stated, but so much of her love of flowers and gardening comes from that. And they use the Granville rose that was grown on their family, and then she inherited it. The house and garden that Catherine lived on for the rest of her life. She was someone who loved her flowers. So speaking of gardening in today's episode, I felt this book too was tied in beautifully with what we're talking about. She was an inspiring individual. A lot of the book, there's about 3 or 4, maybe 5 chapters that really walk you through the history of Ravensbrück, the women's concentration camp. So many of us don't know about this particular camp, and it is heartbreaking to read it, but in many ways very, very necessary to understand. So just a heads up on that. But you see various storylines that have been in the series are from this book. Justine Picardi is or was the editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar. She now is a contributing editor to Harper's Bazaar UK. And I also wanted to point out, so you might remember Gwen Close plays a role in the series. She plays the role of Carmel Snow. And for those that don't know the fashion industry or haven't read this book, they may be thinking, okay, who's this woman? Out of the blue, she just comes into. But she was a huge name in the fashion industry at the time. So she was the editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar New York. She's a huge Francophile, and she spent a lot of her time in Paris writing about all the couture lines and getting to know the designers and befriending them. And she really had a lot of influence in the industry. And so when you see her come into the series, I think Glenn Close plays her very fairly to what is depicted in this biography. It's interesting to get to know her because she plays a huge role in having a gut instinct about Christian Dior, because he really was not well known by international magazines until this new look. I mean, this really was his coming out with regards to that. And she did play a significant, helpful role in getting his name out there, because he then also appeared in Vogue later after this, and it just boom, blossomed into what it became in just a 10-year period of time. It's just amazing. So highly recommend this book. The chapters are not super short, but they're not super long, and they really are concisely written and keep you engaged. Justine Picardi does a very nice job of writing and integrating many different life stories into this. You do learn a lot about Coco Chanel in this as well. But if you do want to learn more about Coco Chanel in depth, and I mean in depth, read her biography about Coco Chanel. And I'll link Justine Picardi, and you just search her for biographies. You can find that book. But this is our petit plaisir for this week. Miss Dior, A Story of Courage and Couture by Justine Picardi. Highly recommend it. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each episode where I'll recommend a book, a film, a show, a recipe, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. All right, so as we wrap up this first episode of April, just a heads up, if you are a gardener and you are interested in welcoming a Sussex trug into your gardening routine, this is a once-a-year event that I have on the blog, a 1-week pre-ordering opportunity to order your trugs through the Simply Luxurious Life that are handmade in Sussex by Thomas Smith Trugs. I'm working directly with the owner of that company. And for 1 week, you pre-order through me. If you live in the States, the shipping is a lot less if you ship from me versus from England. And even some of the trugs that I'm making available, he's not making available online at all anymore at this point, but he will make them for us. So it'll take about two months for them to come. You'll pre-order by the 7th of April. So make sure you go to the blog and click on the pre-ordering post, and it'll show you the prices of each trug, the 4 styles I'm making available. And if you're a top tier member, you get 10% off your order. We only do this once a year leading up to British Week, which is in May, but they are special treasures that I use all the time in my garden, and they are well worth the investment. If you take good care of them, they really can last a lifetime. So anyway, check that out. And then I want to give you a heads up. If you have ever been considering becoming a top tier member, so the once a year savings opportunity, permanent savings opportunity on top tier memberships is going to take place over just 4 days this year from April 18th. That's Thursday, April 18th. And through the Sunday, the 21st. I'll remind you again in the next episode, episode 379. But just a heads up, if you've ever been entertaining the idea of becoming a top tier member, this is your opportunity to get permanent savings, a discount on the current prices as they stand. All right. I hope spring has started well for you, as we talked about last episode, and you're stepping into this brand new month of April. If you're stepping into spring, things are starting to blossom. If you're stepping into fall, things are starting to turn those gorgeous gemmy colors. And I'll be back with a new episode on the 17th of April. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bonne journée. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, visit the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, with the shortened URL tsll.co or thesimplyluxuriouslife.com. For more in-depth exploration of how to cultivate your own unique, simply luxurious life, pick up my new book, which became both a bestseller and #1 new release in France Travel, The Road to Le Papillon, Daily Meditations on True Contentment. Available in all 4 formats for your preferred reading or listening. My first book, titled Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, and my second book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, are also available in each of the 4 formats. Readers can now join the more intimate The Simply Luxurious Life international community by becoming members of the blog, which offers the benefits of ad-free reading site-wide, unlimited access and exclusive access to content on the blog, such as the monthly A Couple Moments with Shannon video chat, tours of my home Le Papillon, the monthly What Made Me Smile post, and monthly Ponderings post, as well as the exclusive opportunity to enter all of the giveaways during the annual French and British weeks. To stay caught up on all things Simply Luxurious, the podcast, blog post, the cooking show, and receive exclusive news, as well as an extra dose of inspiration to jumpstart each new month, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's free monthly newsletter, arriving on the last day of each month in your inbox. There is also a weekly newsletter, which is also free, and arrives each Friday to keep you caught up on the recent weekly posts on the blog. Enjoy with a hot cuppa or cup of morning coffee, and stay in the know about all things simply luxurious. Look for 2 new episodes of this podcast on the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of each month. And until next time, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Thank you for tuning in. Bonne journée.